The truth has a way of crashing into your dreams. Hae-won stood in front of the mirror, admiring the reflection of her radiant wedding gown and envisioning the moment when Tae-min would finally see her as his forever. For 7 years, she had nurtured a love that felt like a fairy tale, believing every whispered promise and stolen look would culminate in their imminent vows. The world around her shimmered with the anticipation of love, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing just beneath the surface. Days before the ceremony, Hae-won returned from a joyful outing with friends, her heart light with joy until a single phone call shattered her bliss. "I can't believe you didn't know," the voice on the other end, her childhood best friend, said, laced with disbelief. "Tae-min has a son, a 5-year-old boy." The words echoed ominously in her mind, sending a shockwave through her veins that froze the joy in her heart. Min-jae. The name felt foreign, but it settled in her mind like a weight. She felt unmoored, her dreams washed away in an instant. Determined to seek clarity, Hae-won confronted Tae-min, whose eyes widened as she revealed what she knew. "How could you keep this from me?" she questioned, her voice thick with hurt. He stuttered through his defense, fumbling for words while she struggled with the raw reality of her heart. With each excuse, he gave about helping Eun-bi, a name that cut like glass. Hae-won's vision of their life together darkened. She had sacrificed so much for him, for this vision of their future, only to learn he had been building another life in secret. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken truths and unbridgeable distance. In the days that followed, cracks began to show in her once idealized vision of love. Hae-won's friends, who had been so excited about her wedding, now watched with concern as she delved into work, seeking solace in the company she had secretly built to support Tae-min's ascent in his career. Yet, even the achievements faded against the backdrop of her heartbreak. It wasn't just the child. It was the realization that he had always prioritized Eun-bi and Min-jae, making her feel like a secondary character in her own love story. As the day of the wedding dawned, Hae-won felt like a ghost in her own life. The venue sparkled with lights, and guests buzzed with excitement, but all she could feel was the crushing weight of betrayal. Standing before the altar, she glanced at the expectant faces of family and friends and felt overwhelming nausea. The restlessness in her heart became unbearable, and in that pivotal moment, she turned and walked away, leaving behind the family she would have created with Tae-min. The aftermath was swift. The gossip came like wildfire, and Tae-min was left staring after her in disbelief and humiliation. She didn't go far, just enough to be alone, buried in contemplation of what had been and what might have been. It was during this moment of solitude that Ji-hoon, her college classmate, stepped in. "I've watched you for years, Hae-won. You're worth so much more than this heartbreak," he said, his presence steady and warm. In him, she found a new source of strength and hope. His unwavering belief in her made her heart flicker with possibilities yet uncharted. Reeling from her decisions, Hae-won took the reins of the Seoryu group and announced its sale in a scathing press conference. "I am the chairperson," she asserted, echoing the truth she had hidden from herself until now. The gasps in the audience blended with murmurings of disbelief as she stripped Tae-min of his title, a poignant act of self-assertion that both liberated and solidified her identity. As he listened, pale and aghast, the final threads of their love disintegrated before his eyes, leaving only regret and empty promises. In the days that followed, the narrative shifted. Tae-min, heart heavy with regret, sought Hae-won out. "I was wrong," he said, vulnerable and raw. But too many words had already been said. Too many betrayals had called into question the nature of their love. "I can't keep holding on to what was, Tae-min. I need to find myself," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Hae-won ventured into the next phase of her life hand in hand with Ji-hoon, slowly discovering the affections he had quietly nurtured for years. They built something new together. Layers of friendship mingled with hope, a sharp contrast to the shadows of her past. Together, they stepped into a future that was uncertain yet ripe with promise. While Tai Min was left grieving the naivete of love taken for granted, Hai Wan learned to redefine her journey, discovering that real love isn't just about perfection, but also about choice, resilience, and embracing one's own worth. With every day, she took steps closer to healing, recognizing that the lessons of her past had paved the way for this new chapter, filled with genuine connection, respect, and the courage to dream anew. Life, she realized, was indeed a canvas of complexity, marked by both disappointment and the brilliant strokes of hope, love, and self-discovery. The truth can unravel even the strongest love. Hai Wan stood in her pristine bridal suite, surrounded by a flurry of silk and lace, anticipation bubbling in her heart. 7 years of love, secrets, and promises danced before her like shimmering confetti, each moment intertwining to create a future she believed was solid. Yet, as she adjusted her veil, a nagging whisper in the back of her mind hinted at something lurking in the shadows of their relationship. Flashbacks flooded her mind. Every late-night call where he promised he'd be home soon, every dinner she prepared in solitude, and every time she brushed off the unease blooming within her. Tai Min was charming and ambitious, but often seemed far away, lost inside an invisible world. She wanted to believe in the story they were writing together, the one painted with dreams of white picket fences and laughter-filled rooms. But the tension during their late-night conversation spoke volumes, subtly weaving doubt into her tapestry of love as it loomed closer to her wedding day. Just days before their wedding, reality crashed in like a tidal wave. Hai Wan's phone rang, breaking the silence of her excitement. It was a surprise arrival, a voice from her past. "I think you should know, Tai Min has a son." Her friend's hesitant words pierced through her thoughts. The name, Min Jae, hung heavy in the air, turning her disbelief into an aching dread. Yun Bi, Tai Min's ex-girlfriend, had come to reclaim a part of his life that Hai Wan had unknowingly signed off on. When Yun Bi stepped into their world, confidently holding the little boy's hand, Hai Wan's heart shattered into pieces. The moment she heard the boy call Tai Min Appa, time stalled, trapping her in a surreal haze of betrayal. The boy's innocent eyes mirrored Tai Min's, a sharp reminder of the love that bloomed before her. Questions surged through Hai Wan's mind, each one sharper than the last. How could he hide this from her? Did he ever love her enough to commit fully? Hai Wan stood frozen, grappling with a swirl of heartbreak and indignation, her dreams now riddled with doubts. Confrontation came swiftly, fueled by Hai Wan's raging emotions. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice quaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Tai Min fidgeted, his usual charm slipping as his gaze faltered. "I was going to tell you. I thought it was the right time, but—" He fumbled to explain, but the words felt hollow. His excuses morphed into bitter complaints about timing and the weight of responsibility, echoing in the cavern of her heart. The more he spoke, the more Hai Wan felt like a mere afterthought in his life. Over the following days, the wedding plans that once filled her with joy now felt suffocating. Hai Wan became a shadow of herself, lost in the memories of shared hopes that slowly evaporated with every passing moment. Each detail of the wedding, from floral arrangements to seating charts, became meaningless as she wrestled with visions of Tai Min with Yun Bi and their child. She felt betrayed, yet all she could do was put on a brave face. With each passing hour, the wedding loomed larger, suffocating her with impossible decisions. On the day that was meant to herald a new beginning, Hai Wan stood before the altar, a radiant bride surrounded by love, yet entirely alone. Moments passed achingly slow, filled with the hushed murmurs from family and friends, unaware of her internal battle. As she glanced at Tai Min, adorned in a suit meant for the groom, she locked eyes with him and realized this wasn't the path meant for her. The facade crumbled, leaving nothing but the raw ache of betrayal and disillusionment. With a deep breath, she turned away and walked out, past the shocked faces and whispers that spiraled behind her. The open air outside felt refreshing. The weight of expectations lifted as she stepped into uncertainty. Hai Wan felt her heart race anew, filled with resolve. The realization sank in. Life needed to be more than a series of expectations and sacrifices. She reflected on the possibilities of her life beyond what she had known, the dreams she had set aside in light of someone else's ambitions. There was something larger waiting for her: self-worth, clarity, and love for herself. As Haiwan navigated this unexpected terrain, she found solace in her college friend, Ji-hoon, whose quiet admiration had always been a comforting presence. He stepped alongside her during these tumultuous days, offering warmth and support without pressure. It was in their shared moments that she began to piece together her sense of self, opening herself to the idea of love that didn't come with conditions or betrayals. For the first time, instead of preparing for a wedding, she began to envision a new life fueled by choices untainted by the past. The saga between Haiwan and Taemin drew to a close, marked by letters left unsaid and feelings buried under regrets. But from the ashes of disappointment, Haiwan blossomed into a woman of independence, determined to carve her own path. In the space she created for herself, she finally learned that love should first reside within. Life unfolded with unexpected colors, revealing that healing often comes from stepping away from the familiar and bravely facing the unknown. As she embraced this chapter of her journey, Haiwan felt a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even the most shattered dreams can lead to profound growth, revealing that true love encompasses trust, respect, and never leaving oneself behind. Love can hide the truth, but the truth has a way of surfacing when least expected. Haiwan sat on the edge of her bed, the soft morning light filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the wedding dress that hung pristine on the door. Her heart fluttered with excitement, the joyous anticipation building in her chest, until a single thought threatened to fracture her dream. What if the child she just met belonged to her? Min-jae stood shyly in the corner of the room, an innocent 5-year-old, his wide eyes filled with curiosity and fear. He was everything soft and sweet, a moment of pure vulnerability against the harsh realities of the adult world. Haiwan caught a glimpse of Tae-min watching him with a mix of tenderness and guilt, and it dawned on her. The resemblance, the warmth he exuded toward the boy, the way he had always been slightly reticent when it came to Yoon-bi. It sent icy tendrils of doubt snaking through her mind. How was it possible she had been so unaware, so blind? That night, Haiwan's heart raced as she faced Tae-min, her voice breaking the tension hanging in the air. "Tae-min, is Min-jae your son?" The question hung heavily between them. The moment he hesitated, a cold realization washed over her, carving deep grooves of hurt where love had once flourished. "Why didn't you tell me?" she pressed, trying to contain the swell of emotions threatening to overflow. Tae-min ran a hand through his hair, frustration flaring across his features. "I was going to, Haiwan. I wanted to. It's just complicated," he murmured, his eyes avoiding hers. That evasive tone ignited a fire in her chest. The very foundation of their relationship, built on trust and shared dreams, now seemed laden with unspoken burdens. Minutes turned into hours as they dissected the pieces of their shared life. Haiwan felt the weight of her efforts to support him in his career, only to realize that he had always kept a part of himself locked away. "Did you even consider me in this? All those late nights? Those moments we didn't share?" Her voice trembled with the honest heartbreak of betrayal, each word a pinprick against the unyielding facade of their love. In the following days, the tension grew. Haiwan noticed the subtle shifts in Tae-min's demeanor, the guilt-laden glances toward both Eun-bi and Min-jae. Each interaction felt like a silent scream, reverberating in a world filled with unsaid things. Their shared dinners were reduced to stilted conversations while she fought against the rising tide of insecurity. Did he love the child more than her? Had he always put Eun-bi first? Haiwan began questioning her worthiness and began to feel exhausted by a love she thought was unconditional. With every passing moment, Haiwan transformed into a woman on the precipice of change, her patience eroding as she recognized her own heart's resilience. It became glaringly clear. She had been withholding her own needs and desires for far too long. Stepping back, She examined the remnants of a relationship that had once felt so vibrant. The fear of losing Tai Min clashed against the hurt of feeling like a secondary choice in his life. One fateful evening brought the storm to a head. Haiwan stood firm in front of Tai Min, an unyielding resolve coursing through her veins. "I deserve honesty," she declared, her voice steady as steel. "I can't be with someone who's tied to an unresolved past." The energy in the room crackled as Tai Min's frustration turned into vulnerability, a mixture of desperation and regret washing over him. "What do you want me to say, Haiwan?" he snapped, the tension amplifying his agitation. "That I'm sorry? That it all spiraled out of control? It's not that simple. Simple or not, you've left me with choices I never wanted to make," she shot back, her emotions laid bare. Tears threatened to overflow as she grappled with the dichotomy of love and self-preservation. It was the moment when truth collided with vulnerability, tearing down the walls they had both carefully built. Haiwan's heart raced as she wrestled with her own identity, a formidable force emerging within her against the pain. In the quiet aftermath of that explosive confrontation, Haiwan felt both fractured and victorious. Walking away from a love that had no solid foundation was frightening yet liberating. As she stepped outside, she carried the weight of newfound empowerment, a belief that her happiness mattered, especially within a complicated and entangled. With clarity now illuminating her, Haiwan chose to carve out her own future. While the journey with Tai Min had reached an agonizing impasse, she no longer considered the love sparked by. There was immeasurable beauty in embracing her own worth, and with each decision that followed, she chose to step into the light of independence and self-discovery. Haiwan had weathered the storm of uncertainty, and with it, discovered the strength of her spirit, poised for an unexpected but hopeful future where love began with herself. The story between her and Tai Min remained a bittersweet chapter. The love that taught her resilience and the clarity of purpose that beckoned her forward. She silently vowed to honor her own journey and cherish the lessons learned, knowing the next chapter awaited with open arms. In the shadows of love, sacrifices often go unnoticed. Haiwan sat across from her friends at their favorite cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air as laughter and warmth enveloped them like a cozy blanket. But today, something felt off. Her heart was heavy with thoughts of Tai Min and the world they were supposed to be building together. As they chatted animatedly about future plans, she felt increasingly distant, the vibrant conversations echoing against the walls of her solitude. "Are you okay, Haiwan?" her friend Ji-un asked, tilting her head with concern. Awkwardly, Haiwan smiled, nodding to reassure her. "I guess I'm just thinking about the wedding," she replied, attempting to supplant the very real worry gnawing at her heart. With each night that passed, the unease rooted in her mind deepened, fueled by the distance that had grown between her and Tai Min. A week passed, and beneath the surface of her seemingly quiet life, revelations began to surface. Conversations with friends sparked memories of her contributions to Seoryu Group. Every late night she spent researching, every connection she had forged while he was busy climbing the corporate ladder. Moments spent pouring her heart into plans, hidden in the shadows as Tai Min took the spotlight, started to twist into a burden of unrecognized sacrifice. One evening, as Haiwan flipped through old photographs, memories surged, illuminating the dawn of Seoryu Group. The pride she felt when she opened her own business to support him flooded back, but there was a layer of bittersweet truth. She hadn't claimed her role in its success. It had always been about Tai Min, it seemed. She found herself lost in reflection, tracing the outlines of her ambitions, the career she had delayed. In the comfort of her room, she gazed at the images of their journey, recognizing that her identity had become intertwined with his. Then, on a crisp afternoon, it was revealed in conversation with Ji-hoon, her steadfast college friend. "Did you hear Tai Min was promoted to president?" he asked, a gleam of surprise in his eyes. Haiwan's stomach dropped. Her mind raced, and her heart hammered in her chest. Promoted? But the conversation spiraled into an internal revelation. She had propelled him to greatness in silence, and he had never acknowledged her role in it. The realization struck with an electrifying force. Despite tirelessly supporting his dreams, she had been almost invisible, an unsung architect of his success, tucked away behind his accolades. Frustration bubbled as she grappled with emotions she previously had brushed aside. Did Tae-min even understand the depth of her sacrifices? Confusion morphed into resolve, igniting a determination in Hae-won that stoked the fires of her identity. Confrontation beckoned. The air in their apartment felt thick with unspoken words as she turned to Tae-min that night, her heart racing as fury and hurt coalesced. How can you accept this promotion like it's your victory alone? Did you ever think about how much I contributed? Her voice rose in desperation, unleashing all the silent grievances she had tucked away. His expression shifted from surprise to a defensive shield. I didn't know you felt that way, Tae-min replied, frustration etching lines upon his forehead. I thought we were building this together. He reached for her, but Hae-won stepped back, the emotional chasm between them widening. Her resolve deepened further. She would no longer be overshadowed, nor minimized within their relationship. He needed to see her for who she truly was. A partner, not just a background player. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with tension. Hae-won poured her heart out, connecting the threads of her feelings with sheer honesty. You've always seen me as just the person behind you. But I have dreams too, ones that deserve to be recognized. Each word was like a key unlocking a door she had closed for too long. Whether through realization or fear, Tae-min's sorrowful gaze spoke to the cracks that had formed in their relationship. I didn't realize how much you've given up, he murmured, his voice breaking slightly. But in that space between, Hae-won sensed the opportunity to redefine who she was, both with him and without him. Days passed as Hae-won began to reclaim her narrative. The journey ahead felt daunting, filled with uncertainty, yet her spirit throbbed with possibility. She poured herself into her passions, networking and re-establishing her own name beyond that of Tae-min's girlfriend. Each step forward signified growth. She was no longer a reflection of someone else's dreams, but solidly rooted in her own. In time, the weight lifted as she accepted that love could coexist with self-discovery. The struggle shifts, each challenge catalyzed to embrace author. While the future was uncertain with Tae-min, one truth shone brightly. She was now more than a footnote in someone else's. She was the author. Though the relationship with Tae-min teetered on the brink, that chapter held lessons that Hae-won had finally embraced the full tapestry, woven with color and complexity. The world awaited, filled with the promise of fresh beginnings, where love ultimately became a celebration of two individuals growing alongside each other, rather than one merely fading into the background. Love can be both a sanctuary and a prison. Hae-won stood at the altar, her heart pounding in her chest like a wild, trapped bird. The chapel was a vision of elegance. White flowers arranged with exquisite care, delicate strands of twinkling lights flickering above, and the sweet scent of jasmine wafting through the air. Friends and family filled the pews, their faces radiating joy, blissfully unaware of the storm raging inside her. As she stood clad in white, a figure of beauty destined for a new life, she felt the crushing weight of betrayal anchoring her to the ground. Tae-min stood before her, handsome in his tailored suit, drenched in anticipation and love, the epitome of everything she had longed for. But the glimmer of hope in the depths of his eyes now felt like shards of glass against her heart. With each heartbeat, the revelations of the past weeks flooded back. Min-jae, Yoon-bi, the painful realization of his never-ending ties to a past she could not escape. Hae-won struggled against a tide of emotions, yet clarity emerged amidst the chaos. This moment was supposed to be theirs, the culmination of shared dreams, but it felt increasingly like her own dreams were slipping away. As the solemn music played, she could almost hear the whispered judgments from relatives anticipating the next steps of their union. Her mind flickered with memories of the sacrifices she had made, her own dreams set aside, nurturing his ambitions without acknowledgement. She had been strong for him, yet here she was, choking on the weight of what that truly meant. Haewon's thoughts spiraled into turmoil, the echo of her own voice asking, "Am I truly ready for this?" A reminder of her growth surged within her. The echoes of her self-affirmation rang clearer with each passing moment. "I am more than this," she whispered, half to herself, half to the universe. Memories of evenings spent in silent struggle, holding herself up as Taemin's star rose, resurfaced sharply. She had nurtured his ambitions while burying her own. This wasn't a love that felt mutual. It had become one-sided. And in that realization, the veil draped over her eyes began to lift. With the officiant's voice sounding distant around her, clarity broke through the chaos. Haewon found her voice, amplified by a wave of courage. In that pivotal moment, she stepped back from the altar, against the flow of expectations and traditions that had been so carefully constructed. Silence descended harshly, incoming gasps echoing through the assembled guests. "I can't do this," she finally said, her voice steady and resonant. Taemin's expression morphed from joyful anticipation to bewilderment, confusion flooding his features, unable to comprehend her decision. The room seemed to shrink, all eyes on them as he faltered. "What are you talking about?" he exclaimed, desperation lacing his tone. Haewon felt the stares boring into her, a mix of shock and concern, but she could no longer prioritize others' feelings over her own. "Think about everything that has happened, Taemin. I can't marry someone who hasn't been completely honest with me," she said, each word delivered with purpose. The air crackled with tension, and Haewon felt liberated yet terrified. Leaving behind her own past, filled with sacrifices and hidden resentment, was daunting, but she couldn't be tethered to a life that diminished her. Beneath the gaze of judgment and confusion, Haewon walked away with every step embodying her newfound strength. It was time to claim herself, not just as a partner, but as an individual with hopes and dreams worthy of pursuit. The realization ignited something fierce within her, a sense of agency and empowerment that she had buried for far too long. Despite the aftermath, Haewon could feel how she had transformed. Outside the chapel, under the open sky, she inhaled deeply, tasting freedom and possibility. It wasn't merely the abandonment of a wedding. It was the embrace of a future entirely her own. In facing the reality of her situation, she rediscovered her sense of self, unfurling like a flower emerging from winter. While Taemin remained rooted in shock and disbelief, she learned that walking away from a life that did not uplift her was not a failure, but a courageous act of love for herself. Memories of them would linger, but so would pieces of her newfound strength and clarity. Haewon resolved to pursue her career aspirations, using her talents and her own narrative as a launching pad into her future. With each step forward, she promised herself to honor her own journey, reflecting not only on the man she had loved, but also on the woman she was becoming. The path was uncertain, but for the first time, Haewon walked it with her head held high, ready to embrace whatever opportunities awaited her beyond the closed doors of her past. She could no longer be the shadow of someone else's dreams. Haewon stared at the Seoryu Group's sprawling headquarters from her office window, her heart a tumultuous blend of sorrow and determination. After choosing to walk away from her wedding, she knew it was time for drastic change. The world she had built to support Taemin seemed like a gilded cage. Every trophy and achievement felt tainted by the defeat of her aspirations. Long nights spent strategizing, all for the sake of a man who had failed to prioritize her heart. Those memories churned within her, igniting a fire. Haewon's need to reclaim her identity sharpened into focus. She would sell the company. In that moment, it was not just about the business, but a symbolic severing of ties to a life that had kept her tethered in pain. It was her first act of self-love, one that finally put her first, instead of being merely an afterthought. Days later, as the paperwork shifted into motion, the familiar sound of the doorbell startled her from her thoughts. Ji-hoon, her old college classmate, stepped in with a warmth that wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. His tall frame and genuine smile instantly coaxed a flicker of nostalgia from within her. "Haewon, it's been too long," he said, his eyes sparkling with sincerity. They had reconnected in the years past, but this visit felt different. His presence was a light illuminating the shadows she had been wading through. As they reminisced about their college days, Haewon's laughter mingled with the lingering melancholy of her recent struggles. Ji-hoon always had an uncanny ability to coax joy from her. His optimism felt effortless. He listened intently as she recounted her journey. "I've been holding the weight of my choices for too long," she confessed, revealing her hopes of starting anew. "Then why not make a choice that puts you first?" He challenged gently, his voice emboldening. It was a simple question, yet it reverberated through her like a call to arms. His unwavering support was like a balm to her spirit, offering a contrast to the solitude she had felt in recent weeks. Hidden feelings began brewing beneath their budding friendship as he encouraged her to embrace the woman she always carried within. Each conversation reminded her that she was more than what she had allowed others to define her as. Yet, amid the warmth he provided, Hae-won wrestled with trepidation. Ji-hoon's affection had always been subtle, barely woven into the fabric of their friendship, and now it glimmered just beneath the surface. Was she ready to venture into new emotional territory so soon after her heart had shattered? Could she risk entangling herself once more? These thoughts swirled like autumn leaves dancing on a chilly breeze, leaving her unsettled yet increasingly curious. One evening, as they strolled through a quiet park lined with cherry blossom trees, Hae-won turned to Ji-hoon, her eyes probing his. "Why didn't we ever become more back in college?" The question hung between them for a moment, thick and charged. He hesitated, but then smiled, his expression softening. "I guess I didn't want to ruin our friendship, but I've cared for you from a distance all these years." Hae-won felt the air shift, anticipation mingling with vulnerability. In that moment, she saw the possibility of love anew, intertwined beautifully with her journey of self-discovery. Yet doubt lingered beneath the surface. Could she open herself to happiness amid her turmoil? Weeks turned into months as Hae-won transitioned from emotionally fledgling to re-empowered. The sale of the Seoryu Group was a painstaking process, rife with challenges, but each step forward exuded strength. She began reclaiming the dreams of her youth, embarking on a path that illuminated possibilities she had shelved long ago. As Ji-hoon continued to offer his unwavering support, their friendship deepened into an alliance, one forged in shared dreams and empathy. Stolen moments of laughter morphed into lingering gazes, and the unspoken connection between them grew as they navigated the aftermath of her upheaval. Hae-won began to see Ji-hoon, not just as a friend, but also as someone who could be by her side during this renaissance of her life. One evening over dinner, she looked directly into his eyes, her heart racing as she finally spoke the words she had feared acknowledging. "I think I'm ready to embrace something new, Ji-hoon. With you." The admission ignited a spark in both their eyes, possibility and hope shimmering between them like starlight against an evening sky. Ji-hoon's face broke into a grin, one that lit up the room as he reached for her hand, warmth radiating from his touch. "Then let's take this journey together," he replied, his sincerity wrapping around her heart, adding a new layer of hope as she stepped wader into the future. With each passing day, the pieces of Hae-won's life began aligning anew, no longer defined by heartbreak, but by resilience and the promise of love that had been there all along. The journey ahead remained uncertain, filled with fresh challenges and the shadows of her past, but Hae-won felt invigorated, her heart open to new possibilities. Embracing her authenticity, she no longer feared the unknown. Instead, she welcomed it, one step at a time, hand in hand with Ji-hoon, ready to carve her own path, filled with dreams and hope anew. In a world where power is often veiled in silence, truth can be the most revolutionary weapon. Hae-won stood backstage, the bright lights of the press conference illuminating the anxiety painted on her face like a canvas of uncertainty. Today was not just about announcing the sale of the Seoryu Group. It was about reclaiming her narrative and revising the story of her life that had once been overshadowed by Tae-min's ambitions. He had taken too much from her. It was time to expose the truth. The audience awaited, cameras flashing as the buzz of anticipation reverberated throughout the packed room. Industry insiders, journalists, and business enthusiasts filled the seats, their eyes gleaming with curiosity about the latest luxury brand. After distancing herself from the weight of others' expectations, Hae-won finally understood that this was her moment to confront the tangled history she had with the company that started as a shared dream. As Hae-won stepped onto the stage, she swallowed the lump in her throat and took a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming today. I have an important announcement regarding the future of the Seoryu Group," she began, her voice steady but her heart raced. It was a daunting task to hold the attention of an audience primed to hear only what they wanted: profits, numbers, and glory. But what she had to say was far more significant than figures on a screen. She continued, "While many believe that Tae-min has been the sole driving force behind our success, the reality is that I am the true chairperson of this company." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eyes widened in disbelief as they processed her revelation. Hae-won felt the surge of empowerment pulsating through her veins. This was the moment she had longed for, the moment to sever the chains binding her to Tae-min's legacy. Tae-min's expression shifted from surprise to fury as he rose from his seat. "What are you talking about, Hae-won? You can't just fabricate this," he yelled, his voice echoing in the room, a desperate attempt to regain control. But Hae-won pressed on, every word becoming a shield against his retaliations. "Fabricate? Hardly," she declared, her voice strong enough to cut through the tension. Producing documents and financial records from a sleek folder, she laid bare the evidence of her contributions to the company, illuminating the labor she had poured into the depths of Seoryu's foundation. "I supported this company from the ground up while you were busy pursuing your own interests. I was there, pouring my heart and soul into ensuring this vision became a reality, hoping we would succeed together." As she spoke, the audience shifted uneasily, captivated by the gravity of her confession. Hae-won's heart raced, and tears pricked her eyes, but she held her ground. It was cathartic to share her truth, even if it was a thunderstorm in the eyes of that once beloved crowd. She finally felt seen. "Today, I am officially terminating your position as president due to incompetence," she announced with unyielding resoluteness. The collective surprise in the room was palpable. Businesses would thrive or fall based on these moments. Hae-won's declaration was a pivotal shift in the power dynamic she had never imagined she could control. Tae-min's face turned pale, humiliation settling in like a heavy cloak. "You're making a mistake," he shouted, but Hae-won, emboldened by the swell of her reclaimed power, simply smiled. "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." The tension hung in the air, thick and electric. Unbeknownst to him, her conviction ran deeper than the surface pain. She had languished in the shadows for too long, choosing to support a partnership that had dimmed her light. With a final nod, Hae-won stepped away from the podium, leaving an awestruck audience buzzing with disbelief. The deed was done, and as she walked away, she finally felt a sense of liberation, overshadowing the weight of betrayal. The pressure of past failures and a commitment to someone else's vision crumbled away like sandcastles beneath the rising tide. Outside, the city pulsed with life, neon lights reflecting the fresh dawn of her new reality. As Hae-won took a deep breath of the cool evening air, her heart sang with the thrill of uncertainty and possibility. Even in her wildest dreams, she had never envisioned taking back her life in such a grand manner. The path ahead remained unclear, but for the first time, it was hers to define. Hae-won had emerged from the ashes of her former self, powerful and unyielding as she forged a new chapter. With determination in her heart and dreams once again ignited, she was ready to embrace this invigorating unknown, a realm where she would reign as the architect of her own destiny. Each step murmured promises of new beginnings, and she would no longer hesitate to seize them. She was free. Betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. In the chaos following the press conference, Tae-min found himself seated alone in his lavish office, the storm of emotions swirling within him reflected in the rain cascading down the glass windows. The reality of Hae-won's public declaration replayed in his mind like a broken record. Firing him in front of the industry elite had shattered his world. a world he thought was built on shared dreams and unwavering support. Now, it felt like a house of cards crumbling into ash. He picked up his phone, his hands shaking as he typed a message to Hae-won. "I need to talk. Please, just give me a chance to explain." The moment stretched painfully as silence filled the space between them, turning seconds into eternity. The confidence he once wielded with ease felt like an echo of a life he no longer recognized. Each passing minute was a jarring reminder of the consequences of his actions, and desperation clawed at his insides. Hours passed, and he finally received a response. "I can't do this right now, Tae-min." Those words smacked against him like a slap. He felt the weight of his mistakes pressing down, igniting a need within him to fight for a second chance. After all they had built together, could he truly lose her forever? Driven by a blend of fear and regret, he decided to go to her. He arrived at Hae-won's apartment, his heart racing with anticipation and apprehension. Taking a deep breath, he knocked softly on the door. She opened it a crack, a swirl of emotions flooding her expression. Her eyes were red from what he could only assume were tears. She looked fragile, almost like a small bird preparing to take flight, but afraid of the vast sky ahead. "What are you doing here, Tae-min?" she asked, her voice flat but edged with pain. "I came to apologize. I should have been honest. I never meant for you to feel sidelined or unappreciated," he began, pouring every ounce of sincerity into his words. "Please let me explain." Hae-won held up her hand, cutting him off. "It's always about explanations, isn't it? You don't get to decide how I feel," she replied, her voice rising. "I worked tirelessly for this company, for our future. While you were busy chasing your own success, I was left to carry the weight." Regret flickered in his gaze. "I see now that I misunderstood. I thought I was doing what was best for us, but I realize that I've hurt you." The lump in Hae-won's throat threatened to crumble her composure. Perhaps if he had chosen to value their relationship as much as his ambitions. "It's not just about the company, Tae-min. It's about trust. You let me believe that we were in this together," she said, each word slicing through the air, tension suffusing the space between them. "I can change, I promise," he insisted, his voice shaking. "I can prove it to you. Give me this chance. I can't lose you, Hae-won." She hesitated, the turmoil inside her creating a storm of conflicting emotions. Part of her yearned to hold on to the man she once loved, to weave back together the threads of a shared life. But the other part, a stronger part, recognized the lengths she had already gone to in order to reclaim herself. "Please don't insist that I throw away what I've just begun to discover about myself, just to make you feel more comfortable." His plea echoed in the stillness, an emotional earthquake, testing the foundation of her resolve. Yet deep within, Hae-won steeled herself. "I have to look out for myself now. I'm exhausted by your excuses and the weight of the past. I need someone who sees me for who I am, not just as an accessory to your dreams." The finality of her words rang like a tolling bell. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause, and the anguish in his eyes was palpable. The reality settled uncomfortably around them. You could almost hear the cracks forming in the once unshakable bond they had fought to build. "I'm sorry it has to be this way," she whispered, her heart aching for the loss of what they could have been. In that moment, Hae-won turned away, her steady strides taking her back into the sanctuary she had built for herself, leaving behind a man hollow with regret. As the door clicked shut, Tae-min stood frozen, the silence becoming deafening. The weight of the truth pressed against his chest. He had lost more than just a business partner. He had lost the love of his life. In one harrowing instant, he grasped the harsh reality. His choices had dire consequences, rippling far beyond his intentions. Hae-won felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. The finality of her decision left an emptiness, but in its place bloomed the promise of newfound strength. She had emerged not just as a survivor of love's complexities, but as a woman ready to embrace the future on her own terms. The intensity of their shared feelings lingered in the air, an unspoken understanding that love could be both a sanctuary and a battlefield. As Hae-won took a moment to breathe, She knew that this chapter marked the turning point in her life, a bold step into the unknown, filled with hope and the promise to rebuild herself anew, where she would ultimately thrive and where love would be defined by mutual respect and authenticity rather than tangled ambitions or heartbreak. Love often rises like a phoenix from the ashes of heartbreak. Hae-won stood on the balcony of her modest apartment, the soft sound of rain tapping against the window providing a rhythmic backdrop to her thoughts. The past few months had been a whirlwind of turmoil and revelation, but now, as she took a breath filled with the scent of fresh rain, she felt a lightness beginning to settle in her chest. The echoes of her past with Tae-min were fading, replaced by a burgeoning sense of self-discovery and independence that filled her with warmth. She had chosen to step away from the company that had once defined her. Now, instead of lingering in pain or regret, Hae-won was determined to set her own course and reclaim her dreams. It was during this transformative period that Ji-hoon re-entered her life, a firm reminder of the supportive friendship they had once shared in college, a bond that had subtly woven itself back into her daily existence. He was there to offer his encouragement and understanding, a stark contrast to her past relationship. "Have you thought about what you want to do, Hae-won?" Ji-hoon asked one evening over coffee at a cozy little cafe they used to frequent. His eyes sparkled with sincere interest, patiently drawing her out of her shell. "You have this incredible talent for design. You should showcase your work." Hae-won shrugged, the remnants of insecurity creeping back momentarily. "I'm not sure." "What if it's not good enough?" she replied, the familiar doubt returning as she fidgeted with her cup. "Look at where you've come from," Ji-hoon urged, leaning forward slightly. "You've built a career despite the obstacles. It's your time to shine." His supportive nature was a balm for her spirit, reminding her that she was worthy of pursuing her passions, especially after so much time spent in the shadows of another's ambitions. As the days turned into weeks, Hae-won began to seriously consider Ji-hoon's words. Together, they explored art studios and galleries, and she slowly found herself sketching ideas that had once felt stifled. The creative energy flowed back into her life, a rush of inspiration coursing through her veins. Each stroke of the pencil revived parts of herself she had long neglected. Whenever she shared her ideas, Ji-hoon's eyes would light up, providing the confidence boost she so desperately needed. Yet, amid this revival of spirit, an undeniable tension simmered beneath the surface of their friendship. Hae-won could sense Ji-hoon's admiration for her reaching an emotional peak, and with it came the realization that she, too, felt a flicker of something deeper. But every time their conversations turned too personal, uncertainty gripped her heart like a vice. Was she ready to open herself to new love after the betrayal she had endured? One evening, after a particularly inspiring art show, the air between them hummed with unspoken words. Dusk settled like a soft blanket, painting the streets in deep hues of purple and indigo, and Ji-hoon finally turned to her, his expression earnest. "Hae-won, I need you to know something. I've cared for you for a long time. I've always admired your strength, your passion." Her heart raced as he spoke, an unexpected twist igniting a fire of emotions she had pushed aside. "Ji-hoon," she started, searching for the right words. "Just hear me out," he pressed, his voice almost a whisper. "You deserve to be happy. I've seen you hurt, and I want to be there for you. I'm ready to support you, not just as a friend, but as something more." Taken aback, Hae-won felt a rush of warmth that contradicted the chill of hesitation. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. A swirl of emotions cascaded through her, and for a moment, it felt overwhelming. "I understand," he said softly, compassion painted across his features. "Take your time. But I want you to know that I'm here whenever you need me, no matter what." As she looked into his eyes, sincerity enveloped her, igniting a tiny spark of hope. Though she was still navigating the aftermath of her heartache, the promise of something profound with Ji-hoon felt like the gentle start of rebuilding. Not just her love life, but herself. Over the next few weeks, Hai-won slowly began to embrace the idea of love anew, cautiously allowing herself to entertain the possibilities that lay ahead. With Ji-hoon by her side, she took small steps toward forging a deeper connection, all while nurturing her own ambitions and creativity. One quiet afternoon, sitting beneath a blooming cherry blossom tree, Hae-won felt a breeze whispering questions and possibilities. What if I took a leap? What if I chose to trust again? The act of vulnerability beckoned her, urging her to lean into feelings she had buried. And finally, she smiled at Ji-hoon, a radiant warmth spreading through her as she spoke. Let's see where this goes. Together. In that moment, Hai-won stepped forward not only into a budding romance, but into the realization that she was the architect of her own life. This newfound bond with Ji-hoon symbolized more than a romantic interest. It was a partnership rooted in understanding, growth, and the strength to embrace the future. Rebirth often begins when we allow ourselves to trust again, and for Hai-won, every step toward healing was an affirmation of her resilience and the beauty of love waiting patiently on the horizon. Regret is a heavy anchor, dragging down the heart. Tae-min sat alone in a quiet cafe, the atmosphere calm and serene. Yet all he felt was turmoil within. The sun streamed through the window, dancing across the table, but he hardly noticed the beauty around him. His thoughts were consumed with the aftermath of Hai-won's stunning revelation. The press conference had stripped him bare, exposing his flaws and leaving him vulnerable, naked before the world, just as much as before Hai-won. His heart raced as he replayed the moments of their relationship through his mind, each vivid memory now tinged with the realization of his mistakes. He recalled countless evenings where he had prioritized his work and his past with Yunbi above the woman who had steadfastly stood by his side. "What was I thinking?" he whispered, clenching a fist in frustration. Each thought was a reminder of love he had taken for granted, and now it felt irrevocably lost. The cafe buzzed with laughter and chatter around him, but he found himself in a bubble of isolation, thoughts spiraling into the abyss of regret. Each laughter felt like a dagger, piercing through the weight of sorrow that enveloped him. He should have recognized how hard Hae-won had worked, how much she had sacrificed. The realization that he had neglected her emotional needs pricked at his conscience, the guilt clawing at his heart as memories played through his mind. Driven by a sudden burst of vulnerability, Tae-min picked up his phone and dialed Hae-won's number, the connection ringing out into the anxious void. It went to voicemail before he could even hear her voice. "Hae-won, please, I need you to listen to me," he started, his voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, and I wish I could take it back. I want to explain everything in person." Tears pricked at his eyes as he hung up, feeling defeated. A part of him desperately wanted to reach out and regain the connection they had once cherished. He remembered her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled with passion when she spoke about her dreams. He remembered the fierce loyalty she had shown him, even when he had taken her for granted. It had all been laid bare at the conference, and now he was left with nothing but echoes of what was once a beautiful partnership. As the days passed and his calls went unanswered, Tae-min's frustration morphed into a keen sense of desperation. He sought solace in old friends, drowning his feelings in late-night gatherings and false bravado. But each drink reminded him of Hai-won. Every laugh shared echoed hollow, a stark contrast to the fulfillment he had once felt with her at his side. It was as though the universe was playing a cruel joke on him, mocking him for his complacency. The real turning point came unexpectedly, one chilly evening as he sat in a park, the breeze rustling through the trees. He had just received an email alerting him of a business deal he had long wanted to secure, and yet all he could think about was Hai-won's face the moment she had fired him, a look of hurt and betrayal he couldn't shake off. The victory tasted bittersweet, a hollow win that he no longer reveled in. Suddenly he spotted Hai-won walking toward him with a friend in tow, laughter bubbling between them, and it struck him like a lightning bolt. She looked vibrant, free. The sight of her enjoying life without him exposed the raw truth of his choices. As their eyes met, he saw her smile falter, momentarily replaced by a flash of uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, he approached her, heart racing with both fear and determination. "Hae-won!" he called out, his voice tinged with hope and a hint of desperation. "Can we talk? Please?" With a hesitant glance at her friend, she excused herself and walked toward him, the tension between them palpable. Her eyes reflected a mix of apprehension and defiance. "What do you want, Tae-min?" she asked, her voice steady, but he could hear the underlying emotion brushing against the surface. "I want to set things right," he began, voice shaking slightly. "I've spent days reflecting on everything. I see my mistakes clearly now." "Do you?" she shot back, an edge creeping into her tone. "You had the chance to realize that before. You chose your past instead of our future." "I know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "And I'm sorry. I never understood the depth of my actions until it was too late. I took everything for granted, but losing you has made me see things differently. I need to understand how to make this right." As they stood inches apart, Tae-min's vulnerability tugged at her heart. She could see the weight of his remorse, the sincerity in his eyes. Memories of the love they once shared flickered in the back of her mind, merging with the pain and betrayal she had fought to leave behind. "Your words now mean little when they were absent when it mattered," Hae-won replied quietly, her voice almost lost to the wind. Tae-min felt a pang of sadness at her words, and with a deep breath, he realized that change required more than just apologies. It required action, commitment, and the willingness to truly listen. "I get it now," he said slowly, deliberately. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. Just give me the chance to show you that I can be better. I want to earn your trust back, Hae-won." The silence hung heavy, swirling around them as Hae-won considered his plea. Every fiber of her being danced on the edge of hope and caution. Part of her wanted to hold tight to the memories of their love, while another part screamed to protect herself from further hurt. Yet as she stood there, she recognized a glimmer of something illuminating in her chest. Possibility. "I'll think about it," she said softly, allowing a crack of hope to enter her heart, even as she remained guarded. For the first time in a long while, Tae-min felt the warmth of that flicker, igniting a resolve within him to prove that he could change and grow, even if it meant facing the past he once buried. Tae-min watched Hae-won turn to leave, a mix of sorrow and hope flooding through him. The road ahead remained uncertain, but he finally understood that redemption wasn't merely a destination. It was a journey of continuous choice, of recognizing the shadows and stepping into the light, one day at a time. And perhaps, just perhaps, through their struggles, they could rebuild what had once been lost, a bond grounded in mutual respect, love, and trust. New beginnings often come wrapped in bittersweet memories. Hae-won stood at the edge of a sunflower field that seemed to stretch infinitely, the vibrant yellow blooms swaying gently in the warm breeze. The golden petals soaked in the sun's rays illuminated the beauty of her surroundings, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling within her. It was here, amidst the natural splendor, that Ji-hoon had chosen to propose, a whimsical choice that embodied both hope and the tender vulnerability they had cultivated together. As she turned to face him, her heart raced with anticipation. Ji-hoon's expression was earnest, his eyes reflecting a sincerity that touched her deeply. "Hae-won," he began, his voice steady yet laced with emotion. "You've been through so much. You deserve happiness, and I want to be the one to help you find it. Will you marry me?" The world around them seemed to pause, the weight of her past merging with the promise of a brighter future. Hae-won felt her breath hitch as a torrent of memories flooded her mind. Moments of love with Tae-min, laughter shared over cozy dinners, and the heartbreak of losing a relationship she thought would last forever. Yet, as the sunlight warmed her skin, she realized that her journey with Ji-hoon marked a significant shift, a transition from pain to possibility. "Yes," she finally found her voice, tears brimming in her eyes as she said the word. "Yes, I will marry you." The moment hung in the air, fragile yet empowering, as Ji-hoon slipped the delicate ring onto her finger. their hands intertwined amidst the flowers, and Haiwan felt a surge of hope burst forth like the blooms surrounding them. However, while Haiwan basked in the glow of her decision, Tai-min was grappling with the harsh reality of his actions. He witnessed her joy from afar, a crushing reminder of everything he had lost. The press conference had peeled back the layers of denial he had lived in, revealing painful truths about his priorities. Alone in his apartment, he stared at a photograph of them, a haunting image of the happiness they once shared. Regret filled the air around him like a dense fog, seeping into his every thought. "Why couldn't I see it before?" he murmured, his heart aching. The clarity was almost cruel. He had pushed away the woman who had stood by him during the storm, only to keep his ex-girlfriend's shadow hovering over their lives. The pang of remorse became a relentless reminder that love could so easily slip away when neglect fueled the fire of discontent. Tai-min's internal conflict escalated. He had lost Hye-won once, but could he bear to lose her again without fighting for what they shared? The realization struck him as a thunderclap. He had to confront his mistakes. The memory of Hye-won's laughter echoed in his mind like a melody he hadn't appreciated until it was gone. In a moment of desperation, he picked up the phone. He had to speak to her, to explain the change in his heart, but as he hesitated, the thought of her happiness slammed against his conscience. Would she ever accept him back after everything? The weight of self-doubt surged, but he stored it away. "I need to take a risk," he decided, steeling himself. Back in the sunflower field, Hye-won reveled in her new beginning, but the thought of Tai-min lingered in her mind, a complex reminder of what she was leaving behind. In the days following the proposal, Ji-hoon's kindness enveloped her like a warm embrace. They shared long conversations filled with laughter, exploring her passions and dreams that had once dimmed in the shadows. Yet, a part of her remained conflicted, her heart caught in the web of nostalgia and new love. In a reflective moment, Hye-won ventured out to a small cafe where she and Tai-min had often shared coffee. Sitting at a familiar table, she recalled the conversations that had ignited her dreams and the warmth of his presence that had once felt so right. A rush of conflicting emotions surged through her as she sipped her coffee. Loss, gratitude, and a determination to look ahead. "Hey, are you all right?" Ji-hoon's voice snapped her back to the present. Concern etched across his face. "You've seemed quiet lately." "I'm just processing everything," she admitted, feeling a hint of guilt bubble up. "The proposal, my past, it's all intermingled in my mind." He reached across the table, gently squeezing her hand. "It's okay to feel that way. You have a right to reflect on your past, especially with everything you've been through. Just remember, I'm here for you." In that moment, Hye-won felt the tension ease, the warmth of his support wrapping around her as brightly as the sunflowers outside. But deep down, the echo of Tai-min's regret became a thorn in her heart, a reminder that closure was still an evolving journey. As they left the cafe, a figure stood in the distance. Hye-won's heart sank as she recognized Tai-min, anxiety gripping her throat. The sight of him felt both reassuring and terrifying, a storm of emotions swirling within her. "Tai-min!" she exclaimed, surprise and trepidation twinkling in her eyes. He stepped forward, vulnerability etched across his features. "Hye-won," he began, his voice trembling. "Can we talk? Just for a moment." The temperature dropped as Ji-hoon's grip on her hand tightened protectively. Caught between the past and an uncertain future, Hye-won hesitated, staring at the man who had once held her heart. "I need to explain," Tai-min pleaded, his eyes searching hers for permission to continue. And in that split moment of indecision, Hye-won felt the weight of her choices, truth versus hope, the memories of love intertwined with the promise of new beginnings. What would her answer be, standing at this emotional crossroads? The air crackled with anticipation as all the threads of their entangled lives hung delicately in the balance. Whatever her decision, it would echo through the chapters of not just her life and Ji-hoon's, but Tai-min's as well. The journey ahead awaited, a tapestry woven with complexity, love, and resilience, waiting to be crafted anew. Love's tapestry is woven with threads of joy and sorrow. Hai-Wan stood in front of the mirror, taking in the vision of herself dressed in intricate lace, her future intricately tied to the delicate fabric of this moment. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating not just her gown, but the transformation that had brought her to this day. She felt radiant, filled with a sense of purpose and newfound happiness, finally ready to step forward into this new chapter with Ji-hoon by her side. The white flowers lining the aisle were in full bloom, tasteful decorations adding elegance to the ceremony. As friends and family gathered in anticipation, Hai-Wan's heart fluttered with nervous excitement. Ji-hoon entered the room with a wide smile, his presence immediately easing her mind. They had built something beautiful together, filled with understanding and patience, and today was the culmination of that journey. Yet somewhere in the distance, Tai-min stood separated from the crowd, watching as Hai-Wan prepared to marry someone else. His heart ached at the sight of her in a place he once envisioned for them. Regret washed over him, an unbearable reminder of the choices he had made. He felt the cold sting of reality. This wasn't how his life was supposed to unfold. The realization hit him again, harder this time. He could never reclaim what he had lost. As the ceremony began, Hai-Wan's gaze flitted past the gathered friends and family, searching for a familiar face among the sea of smiles. She took a deep breath, allowing herself to be completely present in the moment, despite the shadow of her past that loomed nearby. The officiant began with words of love and partnership, speaking of the beauty of commitment. Ji-hoon looked at her with unfiltered adoration, a warmth that enveloped Hai-Wan and gave her strength. "What do you promise to one another?" the officiant asked, guiding them through the vows. Hai-Wan's heart swelled with love. She felt empowered as she pledged her commitment to Ji-hoon, declaring her intent to cherish him through thick and thin. Each vow reaffirmed her growth, marking a clear division between the life she was leaving behind and the future blossoming before her. Simultaneously, Tai-min's heart sank, the weight of his loneliness bearing down on him. He longed to be part of that warmth and connection, yet he knew he had burned those bridges. Memories flooded back, the laughter they shared, the dreams they once crafted. Regret twisted in his gut, and he could do nothing but reminisce about the love he had taken for granted. The stark contrast between his sorrow and Hai-Wan's joy was a painful reminder that he was alone in bearing the consequences of his actions. As the ceremony reached its crescendo, the moment arrived for Hai-Wan and Ji-hoon to exchange rings. As she slipped the band onto his finger, a surge of hope coursed through her, merging with the bittersweet realization of everything she had endured. Their hands intertwined, the connection tangible and real, a promise of what was to come. Tai-min felt a sharp pang in his chest as he witnessed the intimacy of their exchange. In that moment, he recognized the depth of Hai-Wan's resilience, the remarkable strength she had shown despite his failures. The dawning light of understanding brought tears to his eyes. It was time to fully accept the weight of his choices. He couldn't dwell on what could have been, but instead needed to prepare himself for an uncertain but necessary future without her. With the vows completed, the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and the air exploded with applause. Hai-Wan smiled brightly as she and Ji-hoon turned to face their family and friends, but deeper inside lay a sense of closure beginning to take root. She had taken her power back, and the journey toward self-worth would only continue, reinforced by the love she had chosen to embrace. As the couple made their way down the aisle, hand in hand, Tai-min took a step back, overwhelmed by a wave of emotion. He knew he had to let her go completely, allowing Hai-Wan to discover her happiness without the weight of his regrets shrouding her light. It was painful, yet liberating, both for him and for her. The celebration grew vibrant as laughter filled the air and friends gathered to toast the newlyweds. In the midst of joy, Hai-Wan glanced at Tai-min one last time, the unspoken words hanging between them, a mixture of gratitude, love, and sorrow. As she danced the night away with Ji-hoon, feeling free and alive, she recognized that love, while often accompanied by heartache, could usher in renewal, and growth. The journey ahead sparkled with potential as she basked in the glow of hope and fulfillment, knowing she had every reason to look forward with an open heart. The finale echoed the complexities of love, the bittersweet threads woven into the fabric of their lives, a testament to resilience, healing, and the understanding that moving on does not erase the past, but instead embraces it as part of a new beginning. With each twirl on the dance floor and burst of laughter shared, Hae-won stepped boldly into her future, forever changed yet beautifully whole, eager to discover what lay ahead. So, what did you think of this story? Do you think Hae-won made the right choice by moving on with Ji-hoon, or do you think she should have given Tae-min another chance? Let me know in the comments below. What would you have done in her place? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our stories. See you next time.